Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor, and I am so thrilled to share with you another conversation that is in celebration of a new book that I've published, a collection of essays from 2006 to 2017. The book is named A Rabbi's Heart. And with me today is one of my dearest friends in life, a colleague who I have shared so much with over the years, Rabbi David Paskin is a song leader, he's a spiritual leader, he is a Jewish futurist, a social activist, he's an award-winning Jewish educator, and his newest venture is Torah Tech Guy. If you look it up, you will see that it is his incredible skill supporting people like me and organizations like synagogues and JCCs and federations to use technology well and share Torah in the world. But most of all, David is my friend. David and I were rabbis together in Boston, and it is my honor to welcome him here. And he does not celebrate himself as much as I celebrate him. Thank you for holding up my book. But he and I were also in a band together a long time ago named Shirav, and I am thrilled to have this time with him. You are sharing the never seen before cover that are that my kids and your students and everybody said, wait, why are you and Rabbi Paskin kissing? That was the cover for our album that we didn't use.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Oh my God. Neshama's going to look at that and say, oh my God.
We won't say how Neshama describes that image.
No, we definitely won't. But I will celebrate with you having some secret knowledge. Anyway, my friend, I cannot tell you how happy I am to see you.
I'm
Thank you for
so
joining me.
happy to see you. It's such a joy to talk with you. You know, it's when you follow someone on, as we all have been doing this past year on social, we've all been kind of watching each other's lives unfold online. And even though this is still digital, to actually be able to interact with you and talk with you and see your face, and it's it's a whole added level of joy other than just reading Facebook posts, and which I love, by the way. I love all of your
Thank you.
posts.
Thank you. Well, that's a lot of posts to love. I hope
It
that you.
is my daughter. So my daughter unfriended you, I think, because she couldn't handle the sheer number of posts that you were putting out there.
So she's not my friend anymore?
Well, maybe she just unfollowed you. I'm not sure, or she just doesn't get
I don't know.
notified.
I don't understand. Facebook owns the term friend, and so if she's unfriended me,
That's
I've really
trouble.
lost her in
Yeah.
my life.
No, she'll come back. Don't worry.
Let me ask you a question because the many kippot that you wear, your music, your technology, your spirituality, your learning, your activism, given the constraint that so many of us feel in these boxes, you've added artistry, I mean, visibly to this one, but in general, you've always been able to amplify through whatever channels are available the stuff that's in your heart. I'm wondering how you are how you are sensing your own flow, how you're sensing your power, given that you have the ability that I really admire to open these portals and to use them well.
Wow, what a wonderful question. You know, you and I've had most of the conversations that Rabbi Creditor and I will have today. We've already had before, but I've already shared with you that when I grow up, I want to be Rabbi Creditor, and I think that the reason I say that is because I feel like I do lots of things pretty well, but nothing amazingly. I know I'm not putting myself down. I'm just, I'm good at the music. I'm good at the tech. I'm good, but like I don't have a niche, and I feel like you've always been able to find. Maybe you don't feel this way, but from the outside looking in, it looks like you've always found your niche, and so I'm always kind of searching for why am I here, right? Why did God put me here? Like really, like fundamentally on a neshama level, what am I doing here? And all of this stuff is God. I hope God didn't put me here to help with Zoom calls, but every time I find something like this outlet for some creativity, it grounds me a little more in purposeful living. I need purpose. I need a North Star. And there have been a lot of times in my life when I haven't really felt like I've had one. And so this has been, or maybe not that I haven't had one, but they've been fleeting. They've been part-time North Stars. And so when I find one that brings me joy and that seems to be genuinely contributive to the world, that's a really happy place for me. I was watching a video the other day that it was talking about I don't know, it was starting a YouTube channel or something, and it basically said you need to know one thing. You need to know what can you offer that other people can't? What is unique that you can offer that other people can't? And if you can find something that is genuinely you, that's a blessing in my life. And so this new thing, and maybe it'll be fleeting. Look, we all kind of hope it'll be fleeting, right? We hope that we're back in person soon, but I actually don't think it is going away. And I'm happy about that. I think that we will be back in person, and we must learn from what we've experienced, and we must bring that into how we pastor to our congregants and our students. But having found a little something that I can give that gives me purpose has really been joyful for me. So
I love that. It's first of all, what a beautiful and vulnerable way to answer what is a vocational, or some would see like a professional question. Heschel said that happiness is the certainty of being needed.
Oh my goodness.
And, I've taken great comfort in that myself, maybe similarly, maybe differently from the way that you described it. But what's really interesting to me about all of that is I remember sharing with Neshama how much I love that quote. For those who don't know, my wife is Neshama Carlebach. She's a wisdom teacher of unbelievable depth. She said, Menachem, that is beautiful, but you know that's also a definition of codependence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Being needed. I need to be needed. I need you to need me. So what you also said in answer to my question was not only how joyful it is to offer something useful, you also talked about finding the special thing that is you.
Yeah.
The reason why I think there's a healthy permutation of that, which I'm in pursuit of too, is that happiness is a certainty that I am needed. I need me. And that is sort of God flowing from the within, right? The image of God that each of us is inherently, not can touch, but is, right? And the technique of sharing it effectively with others. There's something really joyful about that too.
So I think that you and I wonder if this is a clergy thing. I think that you and I, you know what, I don't want to speak for you, I'll just speak for myself. I do a pretty darn good job of hiding my need to be needed. And the reason I was going to lump you together is that when I read your work and the freedom with which you share your opinion, you're not afraid to share your opinion, to say what's in your mind, to stand up for what you believe is right. I read that, I look at your teachings, and I think to myself, holy moly, it's terrifying to me to put myself out like that, because what if someone doesn't like me, right? What if somebody gets angry at me? And so I avoid, we were joking before that neither of us are congregational rabbis anymore. That's in part why I'm not a congregational rabbi, because the idea of not being needed and loved is really difficult for me. And I think that as clergy, our congregants, like we all do, ebb and flow in their emotions toward us. And there are lots of times when, if we are of weak spirit, if we're thin-skinned, we can get really hurt. And I look at you, and you've always seemed to me to be such a person of strength in that regard. So I don't want to out you, but just when I, it's not even your book. It's the way you've been outspoken. It's the voice that you have created for yourself, the public voice, that gives the impression that I'm here, I'm going to say what's on my mind, and I might offend you, and I'm okay with that.
I appreciate it. We've been really, you've been a precious friend to me through significant moments of my life where I have paid the price for how willing I've been, and I've been with you as you've also paid a price for speaking your truths to the universe effectively. And I think, speaking again for me, trying not to project this on you, one of the big challenges here is recognizing that I can speak my truths, and I can do it in such a way that I might even win a heart or two. When I was younger, I don't think that I aimed in that way. I wasn't conscious of the impact that I had on the world, and part of me remained a little bit adolescent about the way that I advocated for things. And I have, if the word has been brave, I've been willing to put my names on things, but as I say in the introduction, I think, to one part of the book, when I first signed my first statement, it was for marriage equality in Boston. My name was out there in the press. I had no idea that it mattered in such a way to other people. And in fact, what I've learned along the way is that if I believe the best in others, I can be solicitous in the way that I share my truth. But if I think it's me against the world, I might just I might not pay attention to the way my words can burn others. Quoting Heschel again, no action is neutral. If that's the case, then the way that I wield my voice matters.
You spoke about that last week. You mentioned that how you've recognized now. I think you were asked. I'm forgetting the exact question that Daphne asked you. What have you learned maybe, or what do you look back on and wish you had done differently? And you talked about how some of your words have stung other people.
For instance, this is not something I've ever written about. There was a moment, this is right when you and I became friends. I spoke at the United Synagogue Biennial Convention in Boston. I think it was 2005. So it was a few years after we met. And I was asked a question about egalitarianism in the conservative movement, and I used the word misogyny to describe those who choose not to daven, not to pray in an egalitarian way, including men and women as equals, as leaders, as participants in service. I use the word misogyny. It's a really ugly word, and it paints an evil picture of people who disagree with me. I do think that the choice to not include women needs to be understood as the choice to not include women. But that doesn't have to jump to where my eyes and heart and mind were in that moment, which is you are consciously choosing to reject the dignity of women. Instead of seeing the other person as evil, I wish, because we can't project our learning on the past. It doesn't work like that. I would never speak like that now. Because my hope is that the beauty of egalitarianism would be so shimmering in people's eyes that they would see it as a good choice to make if they hadn't already made it. What I ended up doing was calcifying the opposition. There's an interesting piece in the New Yorker, maybe 8 years ago, and it was focusing on President Obama wading into a specific issue. The article, if I remember correctly, was called "On the Limits of Presidential Rhetoric." And there was a study that showed that every president since Carter that weighed in on a hot-button issue in American democracy the impact of them weighing in was that the agenda was stalled. Because as soon as that loud voice weighs in on a certain issue, those who disagree are motivated and mobilized.
I
So in
don't know if
fact,
that
it's
I don't know if that was an article, but there was an episode of The West Wing, which I know you and
yeah,
I share a love for. There was an episode in The West Wing where President Bartlett says, "I can't get involved because it's just going to make it worse."
right, right. And I think there's some wisdom there. It's not inaction to choose when and how to speak.
So I remember something that you did write about in the book that I don't think got you in trouble, but I remember it shaking my world. And it kind of, I think, shook the Facebook world a little bit. And I have it marked in here. It's your piece called "Children in the Sanctuary."
Oh yeah.
So something happened. I won't tell the whole story because I want people to read the book. But basically, something happened in your sanctuary. You were working in Massachusetts at the time. Someone said to the parent of, I guess the child was being noisy, perhaps your child doesn't belong in synagogue. And your response was, our sanctuaries are not sanctuaries from children, they are sanctuaries for children. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about the response, but I just remember that really shaking my world. I think you were probably the first person to ever out loud say, hey, all of you adults, get over yourselves. You're looking at this all wrong.
Right. I don't know that I was the first, but there was a big stir. In fact, I heard from religious leaders in mosques and in churches, as much as I heard from synagogues, the disease of reverse ageism, right? That religion belongs to the old or to the elders. And certainly as vessels of our treasured legacy and our history, the elders in our communities are the storehouses of everything that's come before, but they themselves were babies. And what happened was remarkable for a number of reasons. There are actually two stories. One of them is in that piece, and one of them was in my mind. So in my mind, I was remembering the time that my eldest child, Ariel, was in the back of the sanctuary in the synagogue in Boston, where I was the assistant rabbi. And it was Ne'ilah, the closing service for Yom Kippur. And it was a remarkable thing. Somebody in the back shushed her. And first of all, don't shush. And don't shush a child. And don't you dare shush my child, especially when I'm near a microphone. So I remember
But by the
saying,
way, you told me that story, and then I started using, and I did not make this up, that we are a no shush, no push community. So we
yeah,
don't shush anyone, and we don't push anyone.
yeah. You're so much nicer, though, because I was so pushy in my no shushing. I said, what did I say? I said, the gates of heaven are only open to the cries of children, which is actually a quote from Talmud. Um, and that was sort of my fiery, don't do that. In the moment that is in that essay, someone said to a parent of a child, maybe your child doesn't belong here. That parent, thank God, had the seichel, right, had the instinct to say back to the person, maybe you don't belong in the sanctuary. Because ultimately the
Wow.
choice, right, it was that parent who said those words. And then on that day, I went off. I went off. And it became a viral piece on social media. But ultimately, the question that we have to ask ourselves as religious communities is, if I preserve decorum at the cost of losing my future, who am I really serving other than my own wish to be left alone? Ultimately, if I wish to be left alone, and that's what I do in my shul, I'm going to be left alone. And that's not what a shul is about. So the question is, how much joyful noise fits? And can we encourage both self-regulation, because the other extreme is also not good, where we can't have adult moments because everything is pray and play space. There has to be a balancing act, but the shushing is a real disease in the religious world.
Right, the whistler or the flute or the Aleph Bet story of the Baal Shem Tov, right?
Yeah.
That's how our children daven. Look, I now that I'm working, not exclusively at all, I still do a tremendous amount of adult teaching, but I spend my 9-to-5 job is I have a Jewish preschool, I run a Jewish religious school, I run a Jewish teen program, and the noise that they make it's so precious. It's
Right.
my favorite thing to do is to daven with kids.
Right.
Some of my favorite memories of all time are when you and I did Rosh Chodesh Live at Schechter up north.
Yeah, we would be for those who would like to see. You can see younger versions of us. I think there's a video on YouTube, one of them, where we were invited to the Sam Schechter Day School in South Boston, right? It was
in Norwood at the time, I think.
In Norwood.
Yeah.
That's right, it was Norwood. Anyway, they brought us in once a month to celebrate by singing Hallel, these gorgeous songs, and we had such a blast.
Yeah.
And you, by the way, here's the similar aspects, but you were in your element there.
Yeah, yeah.
I was in such awe. You might be more humble about it than you need to be. That was where you belong. Your soul was so shiny.
Yeah,
and the
I
kids
rocked
were
it out.
all in it.
I rocked it out. Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. No, because again, that's it. Sort of goes back to the need and love discussion we were having before. Is that I will I'm bearing more of my soul than I planned to, but I will never forget when I first walked into that Schechter, which I later became a teacher at, and I first walked in, Rita, who was the office manager, was sitting at the front desk. And I think it was Jane who was showing me around, Jane Talbot-Feld-Cohen. And I remember walking through the halls and no one knew me. None of the kids knew me. And I remember thinking to myself, my goal is to walk through this hallway and for the kids to say, "Hey, Rabbi David," and give me a high five. That's all I wanted. I just wanted to have that feeling of, oh, I'm contributing something valuable and it's needed. And it would be missing if I wasn't here. And I think we're all yearning for that. And so when we are able to find something like music to share that, like Neshama's, her music. I mean, what would this world be without Neshama's music? What would this world be without Olam Chesed Yibaneh? I mean, seriously, right? This would be a different world. It would be a world that is lacking something so important without that anthem for the Jewish world, not just the Jewish world, because you've posted videos of churches singing it, and there's something so powerful about, as I said about you before, about finding our voice and really being needed in the world. It's very, very powerful.
It is. I appreciate the way that you're framing it. I feel comfortable talking about that because I didn't design it to be what it's become.
Yeah. Right.
When we give our gifts in purity to the world, especially to our children, and it ends up being meaningful to others, it's a way of saying, "Oh, I do love my daughter. You're singing that song."
Yeah.
And so you and I recorded Olam Chesed the very first time. We debuted it together. The only other time that it was ever sung publicly was at my daughter's Simchat Bat,
right
when she was born. And then we sang it at Park Avenue Synagogue at an AJR gala.
Yep.
And then we recorded it, and how it took off, and the choral festivals that started using it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting question. Maybe I'm just reflecting. I'm not quite sure how to phrase a question around this. Sometimes things flow through us that are not ours. Right? Sometimes things flow through us that are not ours. Our children are from us, but they're not us.
Oh, that song. What's that song?
Yeah.
You know that song?
Yeah.
Your children are not your children. They are the sons and the daughters of light, longing for itself. They come through you, but they are not of you. And though they are with you, they belong not to you. Sorry. The way you said that made me think about it.
Don't be sorry. Everybody, when you're done watching this video, I want you to find David's stuff online. Go and just hear him sing with him. Yeah, and I think that those gifts that we give the world, are the biggest things that come through us. When it's really born purely, which is anything that's born, that's
So,
when it's a real gift.
can I ask you a tangential question to that? Because
No.
yeah, okay, one of the things that that you have done throughout your life, but in this book, is you have spoken your truth. And I have a couple of examples that I just want to share. So you have an article, a piece in here called Now is No Time for Neutrality. We must stop Trump before it's too late. Now, you and I went down this road together. So, and this will not be a surprise to anyone. And I'm not actually interested in asking you about the specific work that you did here. What I'm interested in, though, is that truth piece. Because it comes through you, it is very much your truth. But I think, as you would agree, actually, as you've taught me, there is not one truth. Your truth is your truth, but it isn't the truth. How do you walk that line between wanting to shout from the rooftops, wanting to banging your hand against the wall and say, this now is, we must stop. Now is not the time for neutrality, or all the other ways that you have fought for justice and your truth. How do you balance that with, I might be wrong?
Yeah. It's a really, really hard question. It's a really, really hard question. Part of me, on a gut level, I believe that there are certain red lines that cannot be crossed. And the reason why I felt so clear about the former president's unfitness for office and the danger that he posed was because of how explicit and obvious it was. And I do not understand to this day those who, in so many other ways, demonstrate careful moral thinking, still standing by or voting for. It's complicated, but I do believe that there is a simple way, at least the way that I see it, which is we have to take a Hippocratic oath as human beings not to cause each other harm. And when we see harm being caused to others, we are called to act, not violently, but we call it out. In fact, the Torah says so in the most extreme of examples. If you see someone coming into your house to steal something, right, or to hurt you, you can push them out. You can even, before they can kill someone, you can kill them, meaning the ethics of self-defense and the ethics of human preservation are among the highest things in the world. There is very little higher than that. In fact, nothing. In Judaism, there are three things that I should die instead of doing. Right? I can't harm someone else. I can't kill anyone. I can't sexually assault anyone. And idol worship, which means the worship of objects, really, including guns. So how do I balance the fierce advocacy for what I think is so obviously right with my recognition that there are truths bigger than mine? I think we have to work on humility and perspective and the of reflective process that includes consulting with others. There have been times that I've fought really vocally for things. And for me, they are right. What I won't do, this is maybe the way that I balance it. I will not describe my opponent as evil. I do think that the danger that the former president posed and the terrible harm that he caused is indefensible on moral grounds. And that's not me cherry-picking quotes. It's not me trying to spin. It is what the Union for Reform Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, the Torah Chaim group of Orthodox rabbis, the National Council of Jewish Women, not just what some would describe as far left activists, but it is what the world saw in plain sight. And many of those who during his tenure would defend some of his actions would say, I know the man is a bore and a monster. I'm supporting his economic policy and he loves Israel. Well, there are a lot of politicians who love Israel. Should I defend an abusive spouse because they've done one thing right in another sphere of their world? The answer is no. They are disqualified from being a public exemplar, a leader, or my voter support because they are violent. And for me, that's a pretty bright red line. I don't have any room in my heart for a truth that supports violence against people.
How have you? Another balance question: the politics and the pulpit. You write in here. You have an amazing quote in here that says, "Waiting is not an option for our world. The Messiah has taken so long. He's become a political punchline." We have work to do in society to rebuild. Let's begin by choosing leaders who sound like our best selves. That's actually from another piece that's on a rabbinic comment on messianic politics. How have you kept that balance between politics, the pulpit? You're not in the pulpit anymore, but in many ways you still are. I mean, you still certainly have a pulpit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pulpit is such an interesting world, given that pulpits look just like this now, right? So interesting that the world that you and I are physically, virtually inhabiting right now is what every pulpit looks like, right? And in fact, part of what has been very satisfying to me about my work as a digital rabbi has been that my pulpit has always been larger than the synagogue that I was serving. And so now, given that my work with UJA, it's the largest, I didn't know this, it's the largest local nonprofit in the world. And the kind of broadcasting that I do now every day is a pretty broad pulpit. I didn't expect that. The politics is really complicated, both on this current, my current role involves a big donor base, and that donor base doesn't agree about all politics. The question is how to make sure that what I do is shining a light but not wielding a sword in the name of justice. Ultimately, I think models like Dr. King and Rabbi Heschel and other champions of nonviolent protest have shown the way of acting with a prophetic voice in the political sphere, which won't appeal to everyone and will certainly garner plenty of disagreement. But there's a way that to not speak of a political moment like the murder of George Floyd, for instance, is to abdicate the authenticity of a religious voice. When I watch a human being murder another human being and remain silent, then God is shouting at me that the blood of my brother is screaming from the earth. Because then exactly, right? Silence is similar to consent. And, I don't know if it's a balance thing, but it's a very tricky dance because ultimately, there will be people in the Jewish community who disagree with any political stance, not just the ones that I take. The real question is, can we be brave enough to remember that the book of Leviticus tells us that the religious path towards holiness, which was your thesis in rabbinical school, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Kedoshim to you?
Yeah.
Right? Be holy. That chapter is full of how to treat the stranger, how to treat the vulnerable, how to treat the orphan, make sure that your economic policy is just, and don't render unfair decisions, which means Jews have something to say about the American legal system. Criminal justice reform sounds a lot like Leviticus. And so I want to be a Ben Torah. I want to be part of this enormously holy thing we call Torah. If I want to be part of that, then I have to take care of my neighbors. And I can't say that I'm taking care of my neighbors if I ignore them because it's too political.
Yeah.
So, it's complicated not to turn it into a soapbox. That's the danger of this unfettered platform.
And for me, I'm too much of a black and white kind of person, and if I see something that seems unjust. Again, it's a little bit of my truth versus the truth. But if I see something that seems unjust and it's obvious to me, I don't have a lot of patience for people who don't see that as unjust, and it's infuriating to me. Right. As a rabbi, I don't want to call myself a religious person, but as a dedicated Jewish person, it's infuriating to me that we.
Yes, but the question then is, what is the most productive use of your body and voice? Is calling out those who are marching with tiki torches the best use? Well, we have no choice but to call it out. But when I have, gun violence prevention, which is a very big issue for me, and I know for you and for others, right? When there is specific legislation that I want to see move forward, is my time best spent, is my energy best spent fighting those who disagree, calling out the NRA or whomever else, or is it best spent amplifying the good being done by groups that are working on gun violence prevention? Ultimately, amplifying positive energy might be the best way to fight for the truth that irks me so much, that makes me so angry. I actually think that this is a deep question for human relationships that isn't only about, leaders and politics. It's about when you and I fight, right? You and I actually don't fight. But when I fight with somebody, first of all, am I seeing the humanity in their eyes? And what's the best use of my humanity? We're told in Pirkei Avot, "B'makom she'ein anashim hishtadel liodish." In a place where people aren't standing up as people, be a person. Which is different than what it could have said, which is, when you see people going wrong, knock them down. Because my anger, I've seen, is felt, even if I'm not, not able to end disagreements by sheer force of will. If we know that we have influence, and we inevitably do, because no act is neutral, then the question is, how do we wield our influence for good? And calling out those who are wrong-headed really, I think, pushes them into a corner that they won't emerge from, maybe at all, but certainly as quickly as they might have had we gotten out of their way. As parents of adolescents, this is you and me, right? Sometimes the best way to handle my child who's an adolescent, who's agitating, it's what we do when we're that age, just getting out of their way so they've got nothing to push against. It's a really interesting strategy that I think nonviolence points to. Clearly articulated, with the expectation that I will be heard. You might not listen, but I will be heard.
What a beautiful way to frame that teaching of when there is no person, just be a person, and don't berate people for not being people. Just you yourself, be a person. What a beautiful. Okay, I have a question about amplifying voices. Here's my. Sorry, these weekday morning teachings that you've been doing. Are you doing all these just so you can write another book? Because you write a book like every year, or maybe 2 or 3 a year, and this, I believe, is the biggest one you've ever done. What's the power of these morning teachings? Is it really all just a ploy to get another book deal?
Totally.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
But the thing I want to say first, don't change the frames. Behind you to the left is one of the reasons you're so cool. Look at what you can do. Well, that's so cool.
What, that right there?
Yeah, rock and roll rabbi. It's
so
awesome.
But that's a real LED thing. So that was I just celebrated my 50th birthday, and my eldest daughter got that for me. How cool is that? I love that.
That is so cool. You're very cool. You're asking good questions, but really that's cool.
I know, that is cool. Yeah, I like that.
Well, I don't know exactly how to answer the question that you asked about the broadcast, but, March 18th of 2020, we decided, which was a pretty risky decision, to go off script as UJA, and I started broadcasting every weekday morning, piece of Torah, which I opened with your La'asok B'divrei Torah, which I got to tell you,
Torah, but
that's very sweet of you. We recorded it, but you wrote it. I'm sure I sing it more than you ever have.
Oh my God, I hate it now. Because I listen to you like every day, so I'm just sick of it.
Well, I sing it like 7 times a day, and my kids walk by. No one can see it because it's off camera. They're going, they're like, "Are you singing it again?" Anyway, and by the way, when I tried to change it, I don't know if this came up in any other conversation. I tried to change the melody because the kids were like, "You want to try something new?"
Yeah,
I said, "Sure." So I tried changing it, and there was a massive rebellion from the people who'd shown up. They're like, "No, don't
that's funny.
change that. We need that."
That's
It was
funny.
amazing. No, the power of those broadcasts is manifold. One of them is I, I missed people. It was March 18th of 2020. We had just started this terrible thing that we were beginning to learn from and please God emerge from. Not quite sure the timing of anything. And a community started to coalesce that wanted to learn. And then we kept doing it and they kept showing up. And then we have people from Holland and Israel and England and all over the United States and from Paris, and there was Belgium. There was even someone from Saudi Arabia the other day. And it just has a life of its own, so much so that it's become a ritual in my life. I was on vacation in December and I couldn't not do it, so just kept on doing it. Today was broadcast 283, and a few people who've been like regulars sent me balloons for number 100, so I had them behind me. And there is a book project coming from this. I don't know if I told you about it actually. The book project is this: just before we hit the Siyum, we went through the entire Torah cycle when we got to Parshat Vayakhel, the end of the book of Exodus, about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And I had said to the leadership at UJA, we have to do something with this. Look what we've created. But I don't want this to be another, Menachem book. So what we did is I pitched that in the model of Hasidic books. So, right, a Hasidic book, you know this, but I'll say this for everybody else. The rabbi would speak on Shabbat morning, and because it was Shabbat, no one could write anything down. So one student would be appointed to remember what the Rebbe said, and once Shabbat was done, they would write it down. And eventually, there was enough to make a collection that was both the origin was the Rebbe's speaking, but the student ended up emulsifying through their own process and with their own voice what would come out. So I pitched to UJA that we would recruit rabbinical students from every rabbinical school in the country, representing all the denominations and the non-denominational schools. And each one of them would take 2 weeks of my broadcast and create a 4-paragraph entry for every day that was one voice, a synthesized voice. So it wasn't Rabbi Creditor says and I say, it was the thought for the day, basically based in what I was pointing to in the text that I was using, but in a voice that was truly collaborative. So we have representatives of AJR, of JTS, of YU, HUC, RRC, Aleph, and Hebrew College, YU, Chovevei Torah, and Yeshivat Maharat, representing all of the streams, all of the denominations and the non-denominations of American Jewry. And right now I'm working with 26 rabbinical students who are each taking their 2-week chunk and submitting it. And I'm going to take the summer, I think, to do the editing. And we'll have a Torah commentary of our day.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
by the way, similar to having the unforeseen benefit, this broadcast, right? I'm alive through it. I've had some really hard moments this year, and I know I'm not alone. And I was needed. Thank God. I woke up because I was doing this thing with people. And we have this thing called Torah, and we touch base with each other. Like, I am alive because of Torah this year. So to be able to take that and share it, I'm so much luckier than anyone realizes to do what I do.
I want to tell you my favorite part of it, which is it's not actually, well, it is Torah, but it's not the intended Torah, I think. My favorite part of it is the way you welcome people who are watching, the way you honor someone who maybe they celebrate our birthday or something. You do all of these little things during these broadcasts that make the people who are watching feel needed and feel loved. And that has been probably the core message that I've been trying to share with communities as they move into this digital realm, is that it's not enough to pop up a camera and do what you've always done. We have to, and I hope, by the way, that all this digital work that we're doing now will impact the way we do it in person also, and create a more collaborative, more engaging experience, perhaps, not just between us and God. I think that already exists in the liturgy, but between us and one another, maybe getting us off the bimah a little bit. But you do that every morning. There's someone who's watching who just said, as a regular member of the morning Torah study, we've become a community, and the way that you have made people feel that it matters that they're there, to me, is the most important part of what you've done, above and beyond the amazing Torah that you share.
No, I appreciate that very much, and I hope that those who are part of that community understand that that's not posturing. They are the community that we are. They are a life-affirming community, and every part of it is real. And I agree with you. I pray that our colleagues in our communities understand the incredible blessing of showing up the way that we all are digitally right now. No one is taking for granted that other people are there. You know, so many rabbis or cantors probably count the number of people who come to a service. You know what? God shows up if it's just you.
Right.
And if we're lucky enough to have each other's eyes, like this right now, we're looking at each other's faces. Like, I love you so much. And if I didn't already love you, I would have fallen in love with you because I get to see you. Like, that's what we're doing in the world. And I think some people talk about silver linings or blessings. Like, I don't look at this last year plus with that language. I won't use that language because the cost has been too much, too heavy. I don't see blessing and silver lining, but I do see mandate. And I think that we had better use all of our connecting tools so much better, because we are leaving fewer people behind now than we did before. And our people, all people, deserve access to intentional community and holiness. So,
can I share one last thing with the world about you? Is that okay? So, because I never get to do this. No one ever listens to me about Menachem. So here's what I want to say. We've spent the past 45 minutes talking about your books, your advocacy, your impact on the world, which, you know, kol hakavod, like, I mean, a genuine kol hakavod for all of that work. But I think that the most important part of Rabbi Creditor to me is when you and I were with a young 15-year-old girl who was dying, and we were singing, or when I've watched you comfort me, or the millions of times that I've watched you inspire one person. There's a bigness about you that comes through in this book, you know, that sort of big, strong, confident voice. There's also this little tiny, still small voice inside that, again, I don't want to talk about anyone else, or just my little heart, like you touched it, you did, and boy, if I do nothing else in my life, if I could just touch one person's heart, you know, that would be enough. And so in addition to all of the bigness of you and the fame, and you're famous, you know, what are you, like one the top 50 whatever?
Ariel shouted out, he's number 50, number 49.
Did she really? That's so funny. in addition and maybe beyond all of that, what I would want to tell if I could tell the world one thing about you, it's that that's not what you're really about. What you're really about is the one-to-one. It's the way that you touch someone's heart, the way you've touched my heart through your writings, but so much more because of your, I don't know, whatever that is. I love you so much.
I love you too, my friend. And I wasn't expecting that.
Sorry.
And trust me, you have touched one person's heart over and over and over. And I know that I speak for many when I say how grateful I am for you. Friends, this went in a direction I'm overwhelmed it did. I'm really grateful to my dear beloved friend, Rabbi David Paskin, for sharing of his expertise, because his platform is built by Torah Tech Guy, which is him. And also for spending some time talking Torah. This has been a really refreshing and beautiful thing to do. So I'm grateful that we got to do it together. Thank you so much.
I never go as deep into anything as when I'm learning with you. So
spend more time with me. I want to spend time with you.
That's what I need to do. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
All right, friend. Mwah.
Mwah. Bye, everyone.